People told us when we first got together, like, oh, the honeymoon phase, like it's just the honeymoon phase. And we heard that, but I remember thinking even back then, like, what if it didn't have to be? Like, what if we could keep some level of delight and spark and joy and ever newness in our relationship? And so we've really aimed to do that as much as we can.
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Way of the Muse. I'm Makena Sage, and Gigi and I have been switching back and forth a little bit lately on some solo episodes as we organized around some travel and other things. And we will be back together next week with a fun episode that we will do together. So looking forward to that one. In the meantime, I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you today, and Valentine's Day just passed, as most of you know. And it got me thinking, what do we do the rest of the year to really nurture our romantic relationships, right? We have these special days like Valentine's Day. If that's something you choose to celebrate in your relationship, where maybe you do chocolates or you write a sweet card or you do something special for your loved one. But what about the rest of the year? How do we really nurture our relationship, foster a deeper connection? Is that something you're doing intentionally, or is it something you're just kind of leaving up to chance? A lot of times what happens is in the earlier weeks, months, years of a relationship, we're much more intentional about fostering that connection, about really putting the time in and prioritizing the quality of our relationship. But as time goes on, people get familiar. They start to think like, oh, well, we know each other really well, and this is just how we do things, and we're both busy, and we just don't put the same level of attention or intention into our relationships that we do in the early days. And I have been with my husband, Sonny, now for 9 years, and we've been married over 5. And so this is something we've really made a conscious effort to continue cultivating over time. And of course, it's changed, right? It's not the same as it was in those early days. But there are some practices that we've carried through, and then different things we've learned along the way that have helped us really keep a sense of almost like that honeymoon phase. You know, people told us when we first got together, like, oh, the honeymoon phase, like it's just the honeymoon phase. And we heard that, but I remember thinking even back then, like, what if it didn't have to be? Like, what if we could keep some level of delight and spark and joy and ever newness in our relationship? And so we've really aimed to do that as much as we can. And of course, at times we do better than at other times. But what I want to talk to you today about are some of those things that have really worked for us. So this episode is really for you if you're already in a relationship. However, we did do an episode a while back on calling in love. So if you want to listen to that one, it was episode 29, and we'll link that in the show notes. So if you're single and you want to call in that relationship first, then that's a great episode. Or you can listen in now and, just go ahead and learn some things so that when you do enter into your next longer term relationship, you have some practices that you can try on. So again, together 9 years at this point, married over 5, and we're about to welcome, not about to, but in a few months, our first baby girl on July 31st of this year. So we are super excited. We've been wanting to start a family, and we're just very, very excited for this new chapter. So in 9 years, as you can imagine, we've certainly had our bumps along the way, but we've also been blessed to have a lot of peace in our relationship. And this is something that I love to talk about, because when I talk to people who aren't in relationships currently, who are looking, or people who are in relationships, both really, something I see a lot is that there's this sort of assumption or this belief that drama and conflict are a normal part of a relationship, and that as a relationship goes on over the years, the quality is going to decrease, that it's going to be less special somehow or less connected. And I really love to go in and question these kinds of beliefs. What if that wasn't true? What if that's just kind of the default that people have fallen into, or what's been modeled to us through the media? But the truth is, you can actually deepen in your relationship profoundly more and more and more over time. And you can actually have a new kind of spark and depth and fun that you maybe even couldn't have in the beginning of your relationship. And what if drama was optional? That you didn't actually need to have any drama in your relationship? I get so frustrated when I see this, like on dating shows and things like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is what we're showing people. So much drama. And so I think people think that's normal. But the truth is, it's optional. Drama is optional. Some level of conflict, I would say, is normal and even necessary to, to have you both be able to share what's true for you and speak about what you want. And sometimes it's going to lead to a level of conflict that you get to work through as a couple. But it doesn't need to be drama. It doesn't need to be big blowout fights. It doesn't need to be any of that necessarily, unless you really want it to be. And that's what works for you. So first of all, let's just open with this idea that what if we question some of these beliefs? What are the beliefs that you've picked up from your parents, from the couples in your life, from, the media? Maybe you can identify what some of those are, and do those beliefs serve you? And if they don't serve you, then what would be something you would want to take on as a belief instead? And I can almost guarantee you that you can go out and find evidence for that new belief. And so this is, again, a topic I love to talk about, because I just am so passionate about rewriting this paradigm. And it's interesting because this is the work that Gigi has done for decades. In her 40 years as a coach, much of the work that she's done along the way, she's coached in, of course, business and leadership in many areas, but her real genius is relationships and communication. And so in that, this is something that from her very, very early days, she was fascinated by the dynamics between men and women, and the masculine and feminine, and communication. And so these are skills and tools and thought processes that I was raised around. And although it hasn't been my calling in terms of focusing on that particular branch of coaching, we do work with our clients very holistically. So we do touch into relationship. We do touch into communication. I just didn't go out to necessarily become a relationship coach, but it's a personal, very strong passion of mine. And it's been such a joy and a privilege to have Gigi's guidance and her wisdom over the years. So some of what I'm going to share comes from what I've learned from her, the skills and tools that I've learned from Gigi. Some of this, I think, like, why have we been able to have a very peaceful relationship for the most part, and a very joyful and harmonious relationship? I would say the skills and tools I learned from Gigi would be one. Another one is that we have operated from a foundation of what we call all in. All in. So from the very, very beginning of our relationship, we knew this was different. We were like, this is something, different. We think this is it. Basically, like we're going to be together forever. And so far, so good. And in that, we just said, okay, we are all in. We're not going to be 1 foot out the door or, 10% out the door at any given time. It's like, even when we go through bumps in the road, our commitment doesn't change. There's no wavering in the underlying commitment to the relationship. And that's not always easy, right? In my previous relationship, I had doubts. I didn't feel certain. And so I had 1 foot out the door for a long time. But even in that relationship, I had an aha where I finally said, you know what? Even if I'm not sure, I'm going to go all in and just see. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But something about having 1 foot out the door, it was like I couldn't even get clear. And so I learned my lesson there that going all in, like if you really think there's a chance, then just give your whole heart. Go for it. Why not? Because really, at the end of the day, it's the only way you're going to know for sure. Because if you're in there with 1 foot out the door, 10% out the door, whatever that is, you're not really living out the full quality and potential of that relationship. You're just sort of like guarding a little piece of your heart so that if it doesn't work out, you won't be as hurt. But the truth is, you're going to be hurt either way if it doesn't work out. So in that, we both came into the relationship and we said, we're all in. No questions, no, right? In the sense of like, let's just go for this. And then if it really shows up that it's not the right thing, it'll be clear. So we've operated from this foundation of all in. And the other thing we've operated from since the beginning is that we're on the same team. And this is something that can be really challenging to remember when you're in conflict. It feels like you're on opposite sides. So this is one that's been challenged over the years. But even then, we try to remember that at the foundation underneath, we both want the same thing. We both want the relationship to work. We want each other to be happy and fulfilled. And we believe that there's a way for all of those things to happen. And so underneath, even if it appears that we're in conflict, we know that we're on the same team. So those two things, going all in and being on the same team, have been huge for the quality of our relationship. And then finally, I would just say that we are committed to having a great relationship. This is something that matters to us. It's a value for us. And we work on that daily. We really do. I mean, it's not that every single day we're having, communications about our relationship or something, but we're doing different practices a lot of the time, or we're just loving each other deeply, we're acknowledging each other, we're doing things to feed the bank of our relationship and not just taking withdrawals all the time. A lot of times what I see is past a certain point, people stop depositing into their relationship bank. They're just taking, right? They're just like, oh, this is something that should give me support, love, etc. And I'm going to minimally, if at all, make any deposits. But how does that work, right? You're going to run out of money in the bank there pretty quick, or love, or maybe not love, but just sort of that connection and that quality of the connection if you're not making those deposits. And so that's what I mean by working on our relationship daily, is we're making small deposits that add up over time. And sometimes those are bigger conversations and things like that. But most of the time it's simpler than that. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is what are some of those practices or relationship rituals. Just give you a few different tools that are very simple. Some are more simple, some are a little more in depth. And that way you can start to make some more deposits into the bank of your relationship that will pay dividends over time. Now, I will say that Sunny and I are both strong communicators naturally. So we do have that going for us in the sense that we are both very verbal. Words of affirmation is both of our number one love language. And we're very good at talking things through. We both have that as a strength. Like if you look at any personality assessment or something like that, communication is high in both of our personality assessments. So if you're in a relationship where that's not true for you or for your partner, then just know that you can still absolutely use these tools. The rituals and everything are powerful, but they may not come as naturally at first. It may feel a little more like a stretch, but believe me, we've shared these with tons of people, and they've gotten value out of them. So give them a shot, try them on. If they don't work for you, then great. Like we always say, you can throw them away, but try them on for a little while, for 30 days, we always say, and see if it changes anything for you. All right, so let's get into the relationship rituals. Ritual number 1 is actually really a skill. It's a communication skill, but it can also be a ritual. I'm going to share it in a more ritual way, a practice. And this is one that came from Gigi, and it's called acknowledgement. So you may have heard us talk about this on the podcast before. And we grew up doing this acknowledgement within our family. And then Gigi and I do this in our business. We do it with our clients. And Sunny and I use it all the time in our relationship. So there are a lot of ways to use acknowledgement, but if you're going to make it more of a ritual or a practice, one of the best ways to do it is to say, let's do this daily, or let's do this once a week for a while. So acknowledgement is saying, so there's a couple different ways acknowledgement can work. You can either be acknowledging someone else for something, which is different than a compliment. It's different than, oh, you look great today. It's really saying what they've done that worked and often why that really made an impact for you. But at the very least, it's saying, I really want to acknowledge you for taking out the trash last night. I noticed it was getting really full. I was thinking about it. And then when I woke up this morning, it was gone. So thank you. And then you can clap. And this is the key with acknowledgement, is you both clap. So now you can do an acknowledgement without the clapping, right? And you can do it without your partner even knowing what you're doing. So you can practice the skill on its own. And we've talked about this on some previous episodes. It's very, very powerful. So you could just say, I'm going to acknowledge my partner for one thing each day for 30 days and just try it on. However, the way I want to talk about it right now is really as this practice that you do with each other. And so in that, you could either acknowledge each other, but most of the time, the way we do it is that we acknowledge ourselves. So we say something we want to be acknowledged for. So I would say, Sunny, what do you want to be acknowledged for today? I do this all the time at the end of the day. And he says, I want to be acknowledged for, let's use that same example, taking the trash out last night. And then we both go, yay, we clap wildly, which seems really silly, right? You're like, do we have to do that? That seems ridiculous, right? But there's something in that touches something in our human nature. No matter how silly you feel, it feels good to be celebrated, and it feels good to celebrate yourself. So when you clap for each other and yourself, make sure you're both clapping on all of them, not just one person clapping for the other person. You're both acknowledging what that person did. And then Sunny would say, Makena, what do you want to be acknowledged for? And I would say, I want to be acknowledged for bringing you coffee in the middle of the day. He doesn't actually drink coffee, but we're using this as an example. And then we say, yay! So what does this do? It gives us both a chance to be seen and heard in what we're doing, because we're busy, even though we both work from home. Often he's in his office, I'm in my office. We might have little moments throughout the day, but we're not necessarily seeing and noticing everything the other person does. So it gives us a chance to share something we've done and be acknowledged for it. So you can do just one acknowledgement each, or sometimes we'll go back and forth 2 or 3 times. So then I'll ask Sunny again, and then he'll ask me again, and we'll do this 2 or 3 times. And we clap after every single one. So that's a really simple, fun practice. It feels a little silly again at first, so you have to get your partner on board with just trying it. But pretty quickly, most people are like, really start to like it. And we did this again as kids, where we would have family team meetings, and we would all get to say something we did that we wanted to be acknowledged for. And that was a really awesome practice. as a family as well. So the other way you could do this again is you could acknowledge each other. So instead of Sunny saying what he wants to be acknowledged for, I would say, baby, I really want to acknowledge you for this. And then we would both clap. And then I would say, is there anything you'd like to acknowledge me for? And he would say, I'd love to acknowledge you for this. And we would both clap. So that's maybe slightly more advanced. Maybe you start with acknowledging yourselves and both of you clapping, but you can do it either way. So that's ritual number one. Relationship ritual number one is having an acknowledgement practice where you're both celebrating and witnessing and hearing what the other person has done that they want to be acknowledged for. And I highly recommend doing this. You could do it at the dinner table every day, or, first thing in the morning, or before you go to sleep at night, making it a regular thing that you do. All right. So ritual number 2 is something we call the 3x3. So this is a daily ritual that combines a gratitude practice and acknowledgement into one. So we've talked about, you could just try acknowledgement on its own, or if you like the 3x3, you could try the 3x3 instead, which actually incorporates acknowledgement into it. So for a really long time, Sunny and I came up with this practice at some point, and for a really long time, we did it every night before we went to bed. We would do a 3x3. And it's very simple, but you'll probably want to write it down. It's 3 great things that happened today, 3 things I want to be acknowledged for, and 3 things I'm really grateful for. Now that's a lot. It's 9 things for each of you to say. So it takes a little bit of time. So you can do a shortened version of this that we call a 1x3, which is just saying 1 great thing that happened today, 1 thing I want to be acknowledged for, and 1 thing I'm really grateful for. So either a 3x3, which is 3 of each, or a 1x3. So you just say 1 of each. And the reason we do the 3x3 a lot of the time is that if you're not in a hurry, it's nice to really dig deeper. 1x3 is easy. It's easy to think of 1 great thing that happened most days. Even if it was a challenging day, or 1 thing you're grateful for. But when you have to think of 3 things, you really dig deeper, right? You really go deeper into what else happened that was great, and what else, do I want to be acknowledged for? So I love the 3x3 practice, but it does take a little bit of time. You'll get pretty fast at it as you go, but you can also do the 1x3 if that fits better for you, or you're both really tired. So one more time. So I would say, if I'm going first, I would say 3 great things that happened today are, and then I would list the first thing that happened was, it was a beautiful sunny day and I got to sit outside in the sunshine. The second great thing that happened was da 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 da. So I just share the 3 things. And then I would say 3 things I want to be acknowledged for. The first thing is that I yada yada yada. And then we both clap. So we do stop and do the clapping in the middle. The next thing I want to be acknowledged for is yada yada yada. Clap. And the third thing I want to be acknowledged for is, right? And then finally, 3 things I'm really grateful for. I'm really grateful for X. I'm really grateful for Y. And I'm really grateful for Z. So that's approximately what it would sound like. Of course, you would be filling in actual things that you're grateful for and want to be acknowledged for. So that's really the practice. And this is, again, it's a gratitude practice. There's acknowledgement in there. And it's a way to connect at the end of a busy day and have that moment of connection with each other to really know a little bit more about what the other person's day was like, what worked about it, what they want to be seen and acknowledged for that maybe didn't get seen and acknowledged. So that's been one of our favorite practices. Some people do highs and lows and things like that, and that's great too. But for us, we really love the thing of really focusing on gratitude and focusing on what's working and putting more of our energy and attention there. Relationship ritual number 3 is called What's on Your Heart. And this is another one that Sunny and I developed. I believe that he says I came up with it at some point. I have no idea how or why. But this is one that I'm going to describe here, but I'm also going to give you a link if you want to get the full downloadable PDF that has all of the kind of rules and guidelines of how to do this, because it is a little bit more involved. It's quite a simple practice actually, but when you first start learning how to do it, there's a few ground rules and it can be easier if you have it kind of in front of you. So you could print out that guide share it with your partner and you guys could try it on. So the guide is at www.wayofthemuse.com/connection. www.wayofthemuse.com/connection. So we'll have that linked in the show notes as well. So here's the practice. This is something that you'll need probably a couple of hours to do effectively. So Sunny and I love to do this over date night. We go to a nice restaurant or make a nice dinner at home, and then we do a what's on your heart. We really take our time with this, and it would be easy to just kind of rush through it and only have it take 20 minutes each or something like that. But I want to encourage you, if you can, to slow it down and to really keep digging deeper until you have said anything and everything that's there. And the more you do this, the easier it'll become. So quite simply, you sit together, ideally facing each other, and one person asks the other person. So let's say Sunny was going first. Then I would say, Sunny, what's on your heart? And he would take a moment and feel into his heart, right? So maybe as whoever feels more comfortable doing that goes first. And when I say feel into his heart, this is different than just like what's on your mind, right? It's tapping into a different place. So you want to almost like go, you might have a lot of things on your mind, but you want to drop down into your heart and feel like what's present for me right now. Are there feelings? Are there thoughts? Are there whatever? But from that heart space. So I'd say, what's on your heart? And he would pause usually and tune in. And then whatever is kind of top of heart is what he would share first. So he would say, this and this has been really amazing lately, or I've been really stressed about this, or whatever it is. It's usually a combination of challenging and positive. A lot of times there's more challenging that comes up to be shared, but he's just going to talk and talk and talk about whatever is there. Fears, doubts, worries, stresses, excitements, gratitudes, whatever's present, whatever has been sort of bubbling up, that's now that he's, taking the time to be present with that, is on the surface. And the ground rules here are, I'm going to try to remember them all off the top of my head, but again, many of them are in that PDF if you want to go deeper. The biggest ground rule is no crosstalk. So in other words, when Sunny's talking, I do not engage. It's not a conversation. It is a one-way communication. So apart from saying what's on your heart, I don't really talk. I just listen. So whoever's listening, whoever's asked the question, is really just what we would call holding space. So all you do is you actively listen, you stay engaged, you don't let your mind wander as much as possible. Keep bringing yourself back to what the person across from you is sharing. And I really love to hold a space of like loving compassion as you listen. So just practice opening your heart and loving the person across from you. Even if you have opinions on what they're saying, or you think they should do something different or whatever, you can notice that come up in you, but then you just let it go. And you just say, how can I just hold an energy of love and compassion and just listening for this person across from me? So that's it. It's almost like a meditation practice or something to listen in that way. But what's amazing about this is by the time the other person is done, you're going to feel so much more connected, even though you haven't had a conversation at all. It's in one way. So you say, what's on your heart? They talk and talk and talk. And if they get quiet for a little while or they're not sure what else, you could say, what else is on your heart? The only prompts outside of that I would recommend using are things like, tell me more about that, or what else? So you just want to keep prompting them in that way until you really feel like, and they really feel like they've gotten to everything. And then at some point they'll say, I'm complete. And you say, okay. Then you guys kind of shake it off, or, maybe not. And then the other partner would ask, so Sunny would ask me, Makena, what's on your heart? And again, I would take a deep breath, tune in, and then share. And while I'm sharing, the same rules apply. There's no crosstalk apart from saying things like, what else? Or tell me more. And Sunny's going to hold that space of loving compassion. And again, this is a practice. It takes practice to listen in such a way that you are not trying to fix anything, solve anything. You're leaving your opinions and what you think somebody should or should not do at the door. When those come up, because they will sometimes, it's just, again, a conscious effort to go, okay, I'm going to set that aside. That's not what this conversation's for. There may be another day, another time for you guys to talk through something, but this is not that time. And very important, you're also not going to talk about whatever you guys talk about in the What's on Your Heart practice. You kind of want to leave it there for a while. Like I would say leave it for at least 24 hours in the sense of don't go in after you're done with this practice and you guys start dialoguing and trying to solve something, or if it's a challenge that's coming up between the two of you, you don't go in and you can both share how you feel about it in your share, but you're not going to go in and try to solve it or go in and, talk to each other about it. Give it at least 24 hours to sit, because sometimes you may find you don't even need to. It may just resolve itself. And if you do, you want to just keep it separate from the What's on Your Heart practice. So this is not a practice. This is something I want to be very clear about. This is not a time to just air your grievances with each other. It is not a time to, say a bunch of stuff about the other person or something like that. This is really a practice to just share what is present for you, what is there on your heart. And maybe some of that involves the other person, but we want to keep it. We want to keep blame out of it. We want to keep that stuff out of it. It's just really about what's there and how do you feel. Okay. So that's the third practice. It is a little bit of a longer practice. We've developed a shorter version of it now that we call What's Here Now. And this is just a much shorter version, basically. But I would really start with the full length one and do it once a month, or, I recommend once a week. We really, really find that it's so supportive for both of us if we do this weekly. But if you can't do weekly, do it every other week or once a month for a while and just see. And, print out the PDF. Make sure you have all the sort of guidelines. There may be some that I forgot that are on there. And notice how the quality of your connection feels at the end of that. All right. So that is the What's on Your Heart practice. So we've talked about acknowledgement. We've talked about the 3x3 or 1x3, and we've talked about what's on your heart. So some are very simple. They're all very simple, I guess, in theory, but some are shorter and some take longer in terms of these relationship rituals. But these are really great ways to foster a deeper connection over time. And I will say one last thing before I close out this episode that is so important in a long-term relationship that I'm not going to go deeply into today, but it is worth mentioning, and that is intimacy. So Gigi's always emphasized this to me in terms of relationship and also the other couples she works with, that intimacy is a key foundation of your relationship. If you are not intimate any longer or you haven't been in a long time, then that is something that you'll want to address very much in terms of the quality of your relationship, because otherwise it's going to impact things, and you can do a lot of other practices, which will be great, but they're only going to go so deep. If you are in a romantic, intimate relationship, then intimacy is a part of that. Now, I know there's going to be ebbs and flows in this, life stages, pregnancy, kids, whatever it might be. So there gets to be some understanding of that, of course, but, it doesn't just have to mean sexual intimacy either. It can mean other ways of being physically affectionate, cuddling, massage, dancing. And speaking for myself, there have definitely been times where it's easy to let this fall to the bottom of the priority list. But something that Sunny and I have noticed is that when we do that, when we let this fall off the list or, it doesn't happen for a while, we start picking fights with each other. We start picking at each other and being annoyed with each other far more often. And it's like, what is going on? Like, why are we arguing, right? Why are we fighting? And then if we're intimate, then we're like, oh, okay, I see. Like we feel so much better, right? So there's something about, we always talk about like our animals, like the human animal that we are in a romantic relationship is like, part of that is that intimate connection. And we need to communicate not just verbally, which again, Sunny and I, that's very easy for us, but also communicate through the body, which is a very different, but equally important way of communicating. So this is a whole other podcast episode topic. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to go deeply into it right now. Probably this is one I would record with Gigi because she has a lot to say on this and a lot of wisdom. But the main thing I did want to impart here is that if you're not regularly intimate with your partner, then everything else is going to feel a lot harder. So trying to do any other kinds of practices, things like that, is going to feel much harder because there's something missing there in the foundation. So just keep that in mind, because otherwise you might go out and be like, oh, well, I tried to do this and it just didn't work, right? And I would say, well, are you guys intimately connected? Is that happening? Or when was the last time that happened? And, you can ease into that in whatever way works for you. But it is just something I wanted to mention before we close for today. So that is the episode basically on relationship rituals for a deeper connection. And all of these are things that we do regularly. This is not me just preaching some skills I learned somewhere, although I did learn acknowledgement from Gigi. But this is really embodied, practices that we do daily, weekly, regularly in our relationship that have really helped foster an incredible connection that is truly one of the biggest blessings in both of our lives. And I always say feels like a battery pack that fuels the rest of my life. So wishing you lots of success, lots of connection with your partner, and happy belated Valentine's Day. We'll see you next week.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.